Talktainmentradio.com.
We give you a reason to come.
The world's greatest radio.
We give you a reason to stay.
Radio the way it should be heard.
You got the power.
The views and opinions expressed are those of the host and guests and not necessarily those of Talktainmentradio.com, 3MR Production, its ownership, management, or staff.
We've got the power.
This is The Compensatory Concept with Mr. Neely Fuller, heard exclusively on TalktainmentRadio.com, the world's greatest radio. Radio the way it should be heard. And now, Mr. Neely Fuller.
If you do not understand white supremacy, which is racism, what it is and how it works, everything else that you understand will only confuse you. Only confuse you. Only confuse you.
This is The Compensatory Concept. I'm Brother Kahari, sitting in every week with Mr. Neely Fuller Jr. And Mr. Fuller, as most of you know by now, is the author of two of what we call the definitive works dealing with racism, white supremacy, and all of its dramatic implications. Now, Mr. Fuller does not get into talking about yellow supremacy, black supremacy, red supremacy, orange supremacy, brown supremacy, or purple supremacy, because Mr. Fuller says that in the functional sense of the word, it does not exist. So let's bring in Mr. Neely Fuller. Mr. Fuller, how are you, sir?
I'm still learning.
Mr. Fuller, how can we get those definitive works, the names of them, and how can we get them?
Well, the basic title for the basic book and the addition to the book is under the United Independent Compensatory Code System concept. But there's a subtitle, a textbook workbook for thought, speech, and or action for victims of racism, and racism is defined as white supremacy. And the basic book tells an individual person, it's addressed to individual persons in all 9 areas of activity: economics, education, entertainment, labor, law, politics, religion, sex, and war, and what a person can do to solve the problem of racism and help that person to replace it with a better system, which would be, hypothetically, the system of justice. And there's a compensatory counter-racist codified word guide that would help the individual person. If they look at the words and study the words and the definitions of words, it might help the person to do that job of replacing the system of racism with the system of justice. The books can be obtained by punching into your computer the word tiny, TINY, .cc// and the word Fuller in capital letters. I'll repeat, the word tiny, TINY, .cc, then a / and then the word Fuller, all in capital letters. And what should come up on your screen is a brief overview of what the books are about and an order form for getting the books.
Okay. And again, as I've said before, these are what many consider the definitive works on the question of race. I want to play a segment from David Duke, who, as you know, has been associated with many things, including the Ku Klux Klan. And he's talking about, will the white race survive? Let's listen to this.
Coupled with massive illegal immigration, which is almost entirely non-European, and legal immigration, which is over 90% non-European, means that unless a political sea change occurs, white Americans will ultimately be not only a minority in the nation that our people founded, but a tiny minority, well on its way to political and physical obliteration by the end of this century. Think about it. A great people exampled by men such as George Washington, Thomas Jefferson, Robert E. Lee, Teddy Roosevelt, Daniel Boone, Davy Crockett, Henry Ford, Thomas Edison, is now on the path to oblivion. White babies are now part of an endangered species in the country that their own ancestors created. The preamble of the Constitution of the United States clearly says its purpose, and even that purpose of the United States, to secure the blessings of liberty for ourselves and our posterity. But the posterity of Washington and all the founders of America is being wiped out in their own nation, and in a larger sense, from the very face of the earth. You know, it seems almost superfluous to recount the achievements of the European and American people. The genius of creating electricity, for instance, the power that drives your computer, and the electric lights that have lit the world's darkness were invented by our people. The computer devices that you're using right now to watch this video were the product of the genius of Dr. William Shockley, who invented the transistor, and the genius of Robert Noyce, who invented the silicon chip. I was honored to have known Nobel Prize winner Dr. William Shockley, and lucky that he called me his friend. He warned the world years ago about the crisis we now face. As a very young man, 40 years ago, I was scorned when I warned America that we would become a minority in our own country. I now tell you that we will become not just a minority, but a vanishing minority by the end of this century unless we stand up now with courage and sacrifice. As recently as the 1960s, whites were still 90% of America's population. Since that time, whites have lost many of their basic human rights. Tens of millions of whites have been forced out of public education because forced integration has made a wasteland of schools in many major cities. When I attended public schools in New Orleans, the most serious offenses were chewing gum or being out of class without a pass. And now it's drugs, weapons, beatings, even rape. Many cannot afford to move to different areas or send their children to private or church school, and too many of our kids are now suffering a living hell in an environment more like a nasty, violent, drug-filled gangster rap reality show rather than a decent public school.
All right, Mr. Fuller, that's David Duke. I'm sure you're familiar with the gentleman, and I know you've heard of some of those names he's talked about. Dr. William Shockley. In the next segment, I'm going to play a clip from a debate between Dr. Francis Crest Welsing and Dr. William Shockley. It took place in the 70s on Tony Brown's Journal. But, Mr. Fuller, let me get your thoughts. There is this prevailing notion now, and we've heard about it. We've seen stuff called the demographic winter, all kind of codes that are used to communicate. In particular, I don't know whether they're scaring white folk. Maybe they've got some data that backs it up. But this notion somehow that white people are going to be obliterated is being pushed from every corner, especially as it relates to letting more people who are considered non-white into the country, et cetera, et cetera. Mr. Fuller, let me get your take on this.
Well, basically, the counter-racist code, the counter-racist concept that I present in the book, Textbook for Victims of Racism, and in the basic concept is when a white person is talking about solutions to the race problem, you simply ask, once they say what the problem is, and once they identify the cause of the problem, and once they make all the remarks that they have to make, that white person, male or female or whomever, whatever white person is talking about race and racism, then you simply just listen, like I listened just a moment ago to Mr. David Duke. And you listen, and when they finally finish, you ask a question. You don't start making statements. You ask a question. Well, since you're talking about a race problem, what is the cause of the problem, and what are you going to do about it? And this is all you need to know. You know, they say there's a race problem. Apparently, he's saying there's a problem with black people and or something or another. So you just listen patiently. And when the person finishes speaking, you say, okay, as a white person or as a person, what do you intend to do about it? And that's the basic question. and you don't run past anything before you get to that question. What do you intend to do about it? Not all of the chaos and whatnot, all that's been covered. He mentioned something about the schools. He mentioned something about immigration and whatnot.
Hip-hop, all that, yeah.
Yeah, hip-hop. Okay, so?
And the implication being that somehow they've come under the spell or the influence of these black heathens, and they are taking the race down. That's the impression I get.
Well, yes, people can get all kind of impressions, and I have an impression. But to simplify everything, you can probably just nod off when a white person is talking about what a terrible thing the race problem is, whatever that is, what a terrible thing any white person is talking about it anywhere on the planet. A black person and non-white person can practically nod off during the whole discussion. I mean, the whole presentation, rather, when all the remarks are being made. And then, when the person finishes, you can wake up and say, okay, well and good. What do you intend to do about it? Because it always comes down to what white people are going to do. That is the key. That is the key from a counter-racist logical perspective.
Well,
if there's a problem, the white people, and there's something called a race problem, the white people of this planet are in better position to solve that problem without even saying one word to a black person about anything. Just one word. See, so in other words, are you telling me to solve the problem? I mean, what's going on here?
Very interesting. Very interesting.
Yes, I mean,
point,
I don't have, I've been trying to
solve
say
it
everything
yourself.
I had to say.
Yeah.
I mean, so, who's in better position to, by a snap of the finger, solve the so-called race problem for all time better than someone who knows more about it than anybody, and presumably that someone would be white.
That's heavy. There's another piece I want you to listen to. This is called Demographic Winter. It's a very interesting because it has the feeling, when you talk about Ms. Fuller talking in code, if you listen to this, tell me if you can pick up what seems to me to be a code talk. I'm going to play a little bit of it, not all of it, but it's from something that came out of a documentary called Demographic Winter. Now, we're going to cover a couple of these, but I want you to listen to this.
Were totally preoccupied by the fear that they were not producing enough children. The sterile, pagan nobility died out with their ancestors' idea of Rome.
No one wanted to have any children, and no one wanted to get married.
Catastrophically falling birth rates, well below the replacement level.
It's entirely possible that the French will disappear. There will be no native-born French that come from the traditional French population.
What some call the demographic winter of Western societies.
It's happening in rich countries, it's happening in poor countries.
Wow, I think that when he said demographic winter of Western societies, now I know you have problems with the word Western, but I think there was I get the sense that there's a message being sent here, because basically what they're talking about are white nations. That's why they call it the demographic winter. Let me get your thoughts on it, Mr. Fuller.
Well, here again, the person speaking, I would just have a series of questions, starting with the words that are being used. What do you mean by demographics, and what do you mean by winter, and what do you mean by whatever it is you're saying? In other words, what are you saying, and who are you saying it to, in order for the person that you're saying it to, whomever that is, to do what? Because it always comes down to the doing part. Why are you telling me this? I mean, whatever it is you're talking about, why don't you take care of it? I mean, these are the questions I have. Why are you telling me? these things. I mean, all these the awful things that are going on.
And we're being hit with this constantly, Mr. Fuller.
Nobody, the non-white people of the planet, the black people of the planet, are being hit with it. You're correct, all the time. So we know about the effects in every area of activity, in economics, in the educational system, in entertainment, in law, in politics, in religion, in sex, certainly in what we call, broadly speaking, because it's all a war, in war. I mean, people are being devastated everywhere. Non-white people are being slaughtered, being poisoned, being dislocated everywhere. We're familiar with all of this, very familiar with that. But now when you talk to us, whomever's doing the talking, what are you saying that we're supposed to do, that I'm supposed to do as a victim of all of this? What am I supposed to do? You're telling me how awful everything is. I already know it's awful. It's been awful, like forever. There's never been a time when it wasn't awful. Everything, as far back as I can hear about. And people bragging about, meaning the white supremacists, the people who believe in it, bragging about how awful it is and helping it to become more awful, because they certainly haven't improved anything in the behavior of people, including their subjects. They have promoted every type of vice that you can name, every type of destruction, anything that's non-constructive. The white supremacists themselves have bought it to non-white people. They sat down at the table and told people that they had just met, oh, you don't want to drink pure water, drink some fire water. I got plenty of it here for you. And then stand back and laugh at them when they stagger around drunk and catching diabetes on reservations and everywhere. And they brag about it, write history books about it. So, okay, if that's what you want to do, but then later on you complain about what you've produced. Gather up people, go and chase people down through the forest and put a chain around a person's neck or a rope and drag them to a ship. And then later on say, we don't want to have anything to do with these dirty, no good, savage people. And as I saw in the paper the other day, at least one person named who was quite prominent in making statements about segregation, they called it. That's a name I didn't invent. And at the same time, producing offspring.
Oh,
and from what I've heard,
Thurman, yeah.
Yes. And this is a legislator who was on this planet for 100 years. And you got some contradictions here. I would say there seems to be some schizophrenia of some type, as they call it. I mean, a divided mind. What are you trying to accomplish? What are you doing? And complaining about what you are doing and complaining to the people that you're doing it to and saying that they are the problem.
That's exactly what's being said, Mr. Fuller.
Some non-white people, I've been told, I'm just going by what I've been told. I came into the world and all this was in place. People were already doing these things. I didn't invent any of this. I'm just observing it and being a part of it as a victim. And I understand that in some history books, they say that some people a long time ago built a huge wall to stay away from all of this type of what you call racial confusion. Hey, you stay on that side, now stay on this side, and don't come around here. A 2,000-mile wall, some people said. A Great Wall, they called it.
Great
even
Wall
today.
of China, yeah.
Yes. And that wasn't to keep people in, I understand, from what I've been told. It was to keep people out who later on found a way to come in and then complained about the situation that they had produced and the conflict that this has caused. What is that all about?
That's heavy. Mr. Fuller, stay right there. We're just getting into it. Coming up next, we're going to go back to 1974 and hear excerpts from the debate between Dr. Francis Crest Welsing and Dr. William Shockley, and we'll tell you why. Stay right there. More to come on the compensatory concept with Mr. Neely Fuller Jr., heard exclusively on TalkTainMenRadio.com.
More people are dealing with depression, stress, and anxiety than ever before. Finances increase stress in stable relationships. Sometimes it's hard to go to work. Need a fresh start? Call 614-833-2684. Contact Noreen Palmer at Affirmative Counseling Associates for an appointment today. Call 614-833-2684. Or check out my profile at psychologytoday.com/Noreen Palmer. Knock out depression and stress starting today. Call 614-833-2684.
The women we love, the women who love us, they are dying. Heart disease is our #1 killer, taking more lives than all forms of cancer combined. But we have the power to save those lives, our lives, because the greatest force for women is women. It's time to stand together, to fight harder, to shout louder. It's time to go red for women.
In 50 feet, turn left. Why are you driving so slowly?
After a few drinks, I'm taking it slow.
Well, you're not fooling the cop behind you.
What?
Get ready to pay in 0.1 miles.
Getting pulled over for buzz driving could cost you around $10,000 in fines, legal fees, and increased insurance rates. Nothing kills a buzz like getting pulled over for buzz driving, because buzz driving is drunk driving. Brought to you by the National Highway Traffic Safety Administration and the Ad Council.
Whenever you're ready.
Okay. I'm ready.
Okay, go ahead.
I would like to talk about a compensatory counter-racist codified word guide and its directive to a compensatory language. You might say, calling attention to English words that are used in a manner that will probably best help someone to weave their way through confusion in talks about race and or white supremacy and or the production of justice and or just any of the 9 areas of activity: economics, education, entertainment, labor, law, politics, religion, sex, and war.
The United Independent Compensatory Code System Concept by Neely Fuller is considered as one of the substantial and basic books for understanding and effectively countering racism. The United Independent Compensatory Code System Concept by Neely Fuller will turn upside down everything you've heard and everything you think you know about racism and how it works. The United Independent Compensatory Code System Concept by Neely Fuller is a must-read. Call area code 202-484-5461. 202-484-5461. The United Independent Compensatory Code System Concept by Neely Fuller. Get the book now.
Join the African American Male Wellness Walk Initiative as they host their first event for the 2013 season, presented with support from CareSource. Understanding the Affordable Care Act, Obamacare, will be held Thursday, February 21st at Summits Trace Healthcare Center, 935 North Cassidy Avenue. This event is free and lunch will be provided, but you must register. Please call 614-754-7511 or send an email to aamww2012@gmail.com.
My name is Al Edmondson. I'm a business owner and community organizer. I want to encourage you to visit the King Lincoln District, our community. It's a great place to live, work, and worship. Catch a show at the Lincoln Theater. Enjoy smooth jazz at the King Arts Complex. Enjoy great food and visit our historical churches and newly remodeled homes. Live, work, and worship the King Lincoln District.
Here at the GED Pep Talk Center, we've got a range of pep talkers standing by. Call 1-877-38-YOUR-GED or visit yourged.org and find free classes in your area. GED is a registered trademark of the American Council on Education, brought to you by Dollar General Literacy Foundation and the Ad Council.
I'm Tammy Rager, host of The Now Age and numerologist to the stars. I've got your lucky number on Conversate in the AM on Mondays, Wednesdays, and Fridays at 9:11 a.m. Make sure you tune in for your lucky number. Punch in talktainmentradio.com and click on Listen Live and listen for your lucky number.
We've got the power.
Justice is better than racism.
That black people are inferior in intelligence because of their heredity?
I have a standard statement. It is not yes or no. It's memorized. I say at the same time every time I think. What I say is this. My research leads me, and it's a tragic conclusion really, my research leads me inescapably to the opinion that the major cause of the American Negro's intellectual and social deficits is hereditary and racially genetic in origin, and thus not remediable to a major degree by practical improvements in environment.
All right, if you believe that the position relatively of black Americans to white Americans is based on a genetic inferiority, and I will accept the responsibility for that word, then what do you see as the solution to the problem?
Well, I see the first aspect of this is to prevent the problem from becoming worse by dysgenics. This first word
Would
that
you
I
translate
mentioned.
dysgenics for me and the audience?
What I
Would
meant
that be
is
sterilization?
No. Dysgenics, you see, means what that other chart I showed you says.
Should blacks,
the least effective element.
Should blacks be sterilized?
No. I have a...
but if blacks are a problem, and we do not allow...
This is inhumane. And I think one can find more humane solutions to this.
Well, then how would... Then
I would propose something in which one of the key phrases, is regardless of sex, race, or welfare status. And this is the proposal. I call it a thinking exercise. It's mentioned in that pamphlet that I showed that you can obtain. And it goes this way, that you would offer a bonus to everyone to be sterilized. Now, we know we have a population explosion problem. We know that in India that bonuses in the form of transistor radios are offered to people.
Would this bonus be directed to black people specifically, more than white?
Mr. Brown, what did I say just a moment ago? I said, regardless of sex, race, or welfare status.
Now, there is a group...
That's what I say.
There is a group of white people to whom this offer should be made also.
Absolutely. Now, the offer is based upon the best estimates, best scientific estimates that one can have of any genetically carried disabilities. Now, there are some, I think, that any humane person would have no doubt about. And Dr. Welsing talked about dominant and recessive genes. I want to point out that sometimes a dominant gene can be a very bad thing, and it is a very bad thing, for a neurological disease called Huntington's chorea, which is something like multiple sclerosis.
Which is more prominent in white people than black people.
That is correct. And I think that one should offer a large bonus for anyone who might be potentially carrying Huntington's chorea.
Dr. Shockley,
beyond this, it goes on with some other factors in this, but Dr. Welsing wishes to speak.
Are you aware that white people have more genetic diseases that affect their nervous system than people of color than black people?
I wouldn't be at all surprised. And I think blacks apparently have higher heart problems.
Would you suggest that all of these white people who are carrying these defective genes, you know, whose families may carry these defective genes, that they be examined and it would be suggested to them that they be sterilized? Would you suggest this?
Yes, I think I would, probably, in general.
Go ahead. You're on Black Journal, please.
All right. Wow, this is the compensatory concept with Mr. Neely Fuller Jr. I'm Brother Kahari, sitting in every week at this time with Mr. Fuller. We can be heard live at 10 a.m. Eastern Standard Time. Then, of course, you can always podcast us by going to talktainmentradio.com and then looking at programs. Compensatory Concept is the name of this show. And then you can listen to broadcasts that we've done. Mr. Fuller, I'm sure you are very aware of that historical and very famous debate that took place on Black Journal back in 1974 with Dr. Francis Crest Welsing and Dr. William Shockley. But the issues that were raised in that debate have been raised over and over. Now you're starting to hear of it more and more, even to the point where Dr. Shockley did not call for sterilization. But as a remedy, we're hearing more and more this notion of sterilization, that black people are just genetically inferior, they're dumb, they score the lowest on all the proficiency tests, the schools are the worst, the communities are the worst. And then at the same time, we're hearing this notion that white people are dying out. Whoa. They're creating this whoa thing about what to do about the planet. Now, he did offer some kind of thing, and it's very interesting as to what he said. Mr. Fuller, let me get your thinking on where we are with this whole discussion now in terms of what to do with the black problem and what to do with the disappearance or the reduction in the numbers of white people. Mr. Fuller.
Well, I think that white people, under the system of white supremacy, which is the system that is dominant on the planet, can make that decision. Like I said before, they can make the decision about what to do about the entire matter. Now, from the counter-racist perspective, because I take the position, and that's what I wrote in my book, that what is needed is a system of justice, which means, and I gave it a compensatory definition, that's the word justice. I gave it a definition that I think is the best definition until I find a better one, and that is guaranteeing that no person is mistreated and guaranteeing that the person that needs help the most gets the most constructive help, considering that all people are people. Some people are weaker than others in some things and stronger than others in others, and that's my perspective. The white supremacists may take the view that, well, if you're non-white or if you're a black person and a non-white person, because it all means the shades of black, if you're not a white person, you're just really kind of out of place. You shouldn't even be on the planet. I mean, somebody made a huge mistake by sending these creatures here called black people and brown people and red people and yellow people and tan people and beige people, people who are classified, who have been classified by the white supremacists as non-white. They're a bunch of scraps. I mean, what are they? I mean, look at them. What are they good for? And that seems to be the general position. But they're wringing their hands about this when they don't have to, because they do, as they say in what you call organized crime, and the system of white supremacy is organized crime. What do you do about people who are bad for your business? And they seem to be hand-wringing, with arguing with themselves about it. They don't have to argue with themselves. They don't have to explain to black people that we're worthless. They don't have to come to me and tell me what a terrible thing I am, that I shouldn't have been born, and that eugenics would take care of my problem and all like that. Why are you telling me? Just do what you're going to do. Stop talking to me about it. If you're not going to produce justice, just do whatever you think will work. And then after if one of the first talks I made was at the University of Maryland. In fact, it was the first talk I made on the subject of race to an audience, 1969, University of Maryland. And I told the audience, which was 90% white, if not more, that rather than keep saying, black people are doing this, black people hiding under the bed, black people are stealing, black people are no good, black people are causing riots, black people are the cause of all the misery on the planet and whatnot, rather than keep saying that, why not just make up your mind to do one thing now while you have the muscle? Just get rid of all the black people, if that's what you're going to do. Now, I'll do the best I can to protect myself in my own feeble way, knowing full well that I'm most likely to lose up against, when you consider, logically speaking, what I'm up against. But I'll do the best I can, just like an ant that's running, trying to keep from getting stomped on. I mean, I just run or hide or fight or do whatever I can, just like any cornered creature, any creature that's in the universe that's at a disadvantage, and I am at a disadvantage. I'll do what I can to protect myself. But you don't have to argue with me about whether or not I should be exterminated. Just make up your mind. See, that argument should stop.
That's interesting. This next gentleman that I'm gonna play something on. You've heard of him, and I've heard of him. His name is Tim Wise. He's been writing a lot about. He's a white male, but he's been writing a lot of information about race. And I'm going to listen to him say a few words on white genocide. Let's go and listen to this, Mr. Fuller.
You want a full discussion of the Crest theory of color confrontation? Is that what you're asking?
Just what is your view on her theory of white genetic annihilation? What is your view of that theory?
Sure, a couple of things. First, I think that there is no question that for some people who are white in the system of white supremacy, that the fear of genetic annihilation is among the reasons, I'm not going to say it's the only one or even the most important one, but among the reasons why at a conscious or perhaps subconscious level they fear that, and that may be one of the reasons why they manifest white supremacist behavior. The only distinction that I would draw between what I've just said, or the differentiation between that, or the disagreement that I have, I guess, with the Crest theory, is that I do not believe it is accurate, nor do I believe there is one shred of evidence to suggest that the only or the overriding reason why all white people engage in racism, white supremacy, is that fear. And the reason I say that I disagree with that, which is my understanding of Dr. Welsing's belief, is that that is the overriding reason for white supremacy, is the fear of white genetic annihilation. The only reason I don't accept that that is the overriding reason for all white people is that for some whites, there is an understanding and a recognition that race as a genetic thing is not real. As a biological thing, it is meaningless. Now, I happen to be one of those white people who does not believe that there is such a thing as white genes, because there isn't such a thing as white genes. There is no such a thing as white or black genetics that are separate and distinct from one another. But the fact that I reject that notion, and therefore am not particularly concerned about quote-unquote genetic annihilation of whiteness, since after all, I can't be worried about that if I don't think there is such a thing as genetic whiteness. That does not mean, however, that I cannot be involved in the system of white supremacy, because there are other reasons other than that why white folks might want to maintain that system. Among them would be the simple fact that whiteness bestows certain privileges and advantages, and has done so ever since European peoples began the process of conquest of other people's lands and other people's resources. So once that system is in place, white people might have several rationales for maintaining it that are not purely about genetics. So I agree with the idea that Dr. Welsing is putting forward, that that is among the logical reasons why a white person might support that system, and that fear, look, for neo-Nazis that you talk to, for overt white supremacists who believe that race is a biological thing, that is absolutely what I think motivates them. She is on point. But I do not.
All right, Mr. Fuller, as you notice, the discussion on race everywhere is heating up. As the president goes into his second term, that is the most powerful. You know, for a while it went underground. When you had Billy Clinton and Georgie Bush and all those guys, it sunk underground. But after New Orleans, after the flood of New Orleans, the discussion of race has ratcheted right up again. Mr. Fuller, let me get your thoughts on what you just heard.
Well, I just say I'm listening. See, when people talk about the origin of the problem or the reasons for the problem, I kind of bow out, because I mostly just deal with the functional thing of what a person can do about it each and every day who is a victim of racism. And I don't get too much into, and I have been in the presence of Mr. Wise several times, but I've never said a word to him, simply because I go back to what I said earlier in this program. He's classified as a white person, so therefore white people can talk among themselves about what to do about the race problem. They don't have to say anything to me. This is why I've never said anything to Mr. Wise. And I usually don't say anything to a white person about it, except if a white person says something to me about the entire race problem. I say, go and talk to the other white people about it. Because, for a very logical reason, if you're talking, and I'll give this analogy, if the captain of the slave ship comes down the ladder and talks to the slave who is there in chains, naked and hungry and miserable, about his or her situation, what is really going on here? When that captain can go back up that ladder to the deck of the slave ship and say, you know what, I think that I'm going to settle this matter. I'm going to sink this boat with all of its cargo, and I'm going off and do something else, because I'm not interested in this project.
You know, Mr. Fuller, it almost sounds as if you are saying that even the complaining or even the acknowledgement might be part of the game.
I have said that the purpose of the system of white supremacy is white supremacy. That's my view on it. Because if they wanted to kill us all on account of we are a big threat, which we really are not, they could do this in a twinkling. In 30 days, it could all be over. They could just give every white person some type of sophisticated weapon. And so just go out and kill all the black people when you encounter them. It's everyone you see, just kill them. Kill them right there on the spot. We'll have a killing machine worldwide. And we'll start, let's say, we'll set it up, take maybe about 5 years to get it all set up, get the plans in place and all like that. We know where they are. You know, we're the ones who hire them. We're the ones who feed them. We're the ones who clothe them. I mean, they're no threat. I mean, all we have to do is just wipe them out. Who's going to stop us? There's nobody in the known universe who has the muscle to stop us. And, you might even add, there's nobody who would care, other than the Creator, maybe, him or herself.
Wow.
So they got a blank check there. See, so I'm saying, and I repeat this, and I've been doing this for years, they don't have to discuss the race issue with their victims at all. If they want us here, and apparently they do, or we would have been gone a long time ago, or they don't want us here. So why are they discussing this with the victims?
Mr. Fuller?
Discuss it with themselves.
Stay right there. More to come as we delve deeper into it on the compensatory concept with Mr. Neely Fuller Jr., heard exclusively on TalkTainmentRadio.com.
The United Independent Compensatory Code System concept by Neely Fuller is considered as one of the substantial and basic books for understanding and effectively countering racism. The United Independent Compensatory Code System concept by Neely Fuller will turn upside down everything you've heard and everything you think you know about racism and how it works. The United Independent Compensatory Code System concept by Neely Fuller is a must-read. Call area code 202-484-5461. 202-484-5461. The United Independent Compensatory Code System concept by Neely Fuller. Get the book now.
More people are dealing with depression, stress, and anxiety than ever before. Finances increase stress in stable relationships. Sometimes it's hard to go to work. Need a fresh start? Call 614-833-2684. Contact Noreen Palmer at Affirmative Counseling Associates for an appointment today. Call 614-833-2684. Or check out my profile at psychologytoday.com/Noreen Palmer. Knock out depression and stress starting today. Call 614-833-2684.
The women we love, the women who love us, they are dying. Heart disease is our #1 killer, taking more lives than all forms of cancer combined. But we have the power to save those lives, our lives, because the greatest force for women is women. It's time to stand together, to fight harder, to shout louder. It's time to go red for women.
Join the African American Male Wellness Walk Initiative as they host their first event for the 2013 season, presented with support from CareSource. Understanding the Affordable Care Act, Obamacare, will be held Thursday, February 21st at Summit's Trace Healthcare Center, 935 North Cassidy Avenue. This event is free and lunch will be provided, but you must register. Please call 614-754-7511 or send an email to aamww2012@gmail.com.
My name is Al Edmondson. I'm a business owner and community organizer. I want to encourage you to visit the King Lincoln District, our community. It's a great place to live, work, and worship. Catch a show at the Lincoln Theater. Enjoy smooth jazz at the King Arts Complex. Enjoy great food and visit our historical churches and newly remodeled homes. Live, work, and worship the King Lincoln District.
I'm Tammy Rager, host of The Now Age and numerologist to the stars. I've got your lucky numbers on Converse Satan the AM on Mondays, Wednesdays, and Fridays at 9:11 a.m. Make sure you tune in for your lucky number. Punch in chalkteam@radio.com and click on Listen Live and listen for your lucky number.
We've got the power.
Justice is better than racism.
This is the Compensatory Concept with Mr. Neely Fuller Jr., heard exclusively on TalkTainmentRadio.com. I'm Brother Kahari. I sit in every week at this time with Mr. Fuller. You can hear Mr. Fuller live on the Compensatory Concept at 10 a.m. Eastern Standard Time every Wednesday, or you can podcast 24/7. Go to TalkTainmentRadio.com, look at podcasts, look for Compensatory Concept, and voila, there you are. Or like some of the old folks used to say, there you is. But we won't go there. But Mr. Fuller is the author of 2 prolific and definitive works on race. Mr. Fuller, how can we get your book?
You can get it by punching into your computer the word tiny. That's tiny, TINY, .cc, then a /, then the word Fuller in capital letters. It has to be in capital letters. I'll repeat. That's tiny, TINY, .cc, /, and the word Fuller in capital letters. And what should come up on your screen is a brief description of what's in the books and a form for ordering.
Okay, Mr. Fuller, in the last segment, I want to kind of throw it back to you to see if there's anything that you see going on or on the horizon that you want to speak to in your way. Mr. Fuller.
Well, it's really, when we have these conversations, I'm really speaking to everything, because I always say that you got 9 areas of activity, and racism dominates them all. That's all of the people on the planet are dominated by a system of racism. The white people are born into it, and they have to make a decision as to whether or not to go along with it or not. And it's real convenient to go along with something that's already in place. It's the most successful religion and political system that the world has ever seen. So, by successful, I mean in mistreating people for the purpose of fun, glory, and material gain. There's no system that has proven to be superior to the system of white supremacy when it comes to material gain, glory, and last but not least, fun. That's the big 3 that comes out of the system of racism. When you're practicing racism, you're getting out of it. You're getting something out of it. What are you getting out of it? You're getting fun, you're getting glory, and you're getting material gain. These 3 things are a difficult thing for anyone to turn down when everyone on the planet likes to have fun. Everyone on the planet likes a little glory. They like a pat on the back. They like to feel that they have self-esteem, that they have something to feel good about, whichever way they choose to do it, constructively or non-constructively. And last but not least, you have material gain. So that's what people have discovered. The people of this planet have discovered, the people who classified themselves as white, that through a system of white supremacy, it's the most successful enterprise ever thought of. So looking at it that way, a person might say, well, why not keep it? As I'm sure Mr. Duke seems to be implying that it's the best system. He said, look at all the scientists, look at all the numbers of people who have succeeded within the system of white supremacy in doing great things, more than any other system ever conceived in the minds of people. But I have looked at it, and being a part of it, a subject of the system of racism, and I said, well, all well and good, glory, material gain, and fun, but not for everybody. And there's a little material gain, and I don't see where the glory is for the victims. I don't see where the fun is for victims, even though some victims have been boxed, their minds have been destroyed to the extent that running around with 9mm in your hand, running up and down the street of South Side Chicago. I mean, that's all a part of the system of white supremacy, killing each other, the victims of racism, the slaves at the bottom of the ship turning on each other, I mean, fighting for food or whatever little scraps they can get and all like that, and rattling their chains and yelling at the people who run the ship, and all of the chaos that goes with the system of racism. It's not a best system, in my opinion. That's the main point I want to make. Yes, you can get fun, you can get glory, you can get some of the things that Mr. Duke is talking about. But is it possible that you can have a better system? I believe that it is. I believe that better system is a system called justice, a word that's been kicked around like forever, but it's never been produced, because no one on the planet, according to the record, has ever taken that word seriously. And one reason is, for one thing, there's no clarified definition for it. You have to have a definition for words when you start kicking them around a lot. So I made up one that I have in the book. And until one comes along that's better, I will accept that. I will accept the one that I made up until one comes along that's better, and I will accept the new definition if it's a better definition. But the word justice, the system of justice that we need to replace the system of white supremacy, would be a system that has two parts. Part one, guaranteeing that no person is mistreated. That's no person, white or non-white. And number two, guaranteeing that the person that needs help the most gets the most constructive help. Now, the concept is not new. But when we make it cogent and make it understandable, and everybody focuses on that one concept, just look around and see who needs help the most. Who needs the most constructive help? Who is the weakest person? Not somebody to despise or spit on or look down on. That's what we are taught in the system of white supremacy. Hunt around, go through the forest and whatnot, and find some people who are weak. Find some people who don't know as much as you do. And then fool them. Because the system of white supremacy is all about fooling people so that you can misuse them. And they glorify in this. But a system of justice would be, go among people, or when you encounter people, people are around you all the time, just say, who needs help the most here, the most constructive help? Is there anybody here that needs constructive help? Because everybody else is going to join in and give that person some constructive help. Just like you do when there's a car wreck. Or just like you do when you hear the sound of an ambulance. The concept is not new. When you hear the sound of an ambulance, lots of people are inconvenienced, you might say, by having to pull over. Many cars just have to get out of the way, sometimes on a crowded highway. Why? Because an ambulance is coming through with just one person. Just one person. Not 1,000 people, not 1 million, just one person.
Mm-hmm.
But you have several hundred people pulling off to the side so that the ambulance can come through. Why? Because that person needs help the most. You're trying to give that one person some constructive help. So the concept of what I'm talking about is not new. But we don't do this in everything. We do just the opposite in the system of white supremacy. Get a gun and go out and hunt animals, and usually hunting people is even more fun. Fun, glory, and material gain. And sometimes even when there is no material gain, let's do it for fun and glory anyway. And then come back and build statues to yourself about how many people you kill. Have a parade. They call them military parades. Parades should always consist of something constructive. I have been a soldier, drafted into an army,
Mm-hmm.
and I was supposed to be proud of that. You're never supposed to be proud of being a killer. No one. Even when you kill an animal, it's nothing to be proud of. It's something that you do because you don't have, that's the only food you have, maybe. That's a desperation move. You have vegetables, you have cauliflower, you have spinach, you have apples and oranges. You have a lot of vegetables. But sometimes you might have to kill an animal, a fish, in order to sustain yourself because you don't know anything else that's around to do. But that's a desperate situation. You shouldn't have to kill anything to survive. But when you do it for fun, when you glory in it and have parades, so-called victory parades, and then write songs talking about bombs bursting in air, there's something incorrect about your thinking, because this is not the kind of planet that should be inhabited by people who think like that. I don't think the creator of the universe, and this universe and all the other universes they say that are out there,
Mm-hmm.
kind of had that in mind. That's the logic that I think should prevail here on this planet, among the people of this planet.
That's heavy. That is heavy. As we look around and we see these race issues, they simply won't go away. We were told once before that we were in the post-racial state, and now it almost looks like we're in deeper into what we could even call a pre-racial, just a heavy racial state. And it's becoming more and more clear that this thing, race, Mr. Fuller, just doesn't want to die a natural death.
Yes. And because people get used to whatever is already in place. Anytime you come around, with any strange ideas talking about justice or something like that, when people are so used to being in a world where mistreating people is considered normal, getting over on people, out slicking someone, taking something from someone is considered normal. Looking at the weakest person, if it's just 10 people on the planet, 9 people looking around to see who is the weakest among the 10, and then all 9 people gang up on that one person that's weak and call that person names rather than trying to help the person. There's something insane about that in the way of measuring what is correct thinking. What is correct thinking that will bring on correct action?
And at the same time will produce justice on the planet. Mr. Fuller, thank you as usual. The commentary is just absolutely brilliant. I appreciate you always. Thank you so much.
Thanks for inviting me.
All right. You've been listening to Mr. Neely Fuller, and I'm Brother Kahari, and this is the Compensatory Concept, heard exclusively on TalkTainmentRadio.com.